Nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, and then shall the end come.
Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?
Well, welcome everybody to Tuesday's edition of End of the Age. I'm Dave Robbins and with End Time Ministries, and I want to thank you for joining me this afternoon. And I'm actually sitting in for Irvin Baxter this entire week. We're doing something unique this week. I talked about it yesterday, but he took the entire week off to, he's going to republish his book, A Message for the President. He wrote it originally in 1986 for Ronald Reagan, A Message for the President. We sent it to him. We got a reply letter back. And he felt like God really wanted him to republish the book now with updated information for Donald Trump. And so he's republishing the book, took the whole week off. He went into seclusion and he's writing his book. And I'm really looking forward to the results. The first one was, it launched the entire ministry is really what happened. And so I'm looking forward to republishing that book. It's going to be awesome. All updated proofs. I know many of you all would like to have a copy of that book. And so I'm actually having a great time sitting in for Irvin this week. And these are huge shoes to fill. And I'm not necessarily sure that I can do that, but I'm doing my best. And I've got a lot of awesome information. There's so many prophecies that are converging at the same time. And so it's easy. Really, we can't keep up with everything. I've got people sending me articles from everywhere saying, Dave, did you see this? Have you seen this? Are you guys aware of this? And we're aware of most of it, but occasionally, normally our research team can keep up on it. However, occasionally there's something that will happen that we're not aware of. And so I do thank you for the information that you do send in. If you ever have any articles or anything that you find that you think is a fulfillment of Bible prophecy, email me, drobbins@endtime.com, and I'll look it over and see if we can use it on the radio or in one of my magazine articles or something like that. So I do appreciate the information, and I look at every email that comes in. A lot of times I'll spend the whole weekend just going through my emails and looking at things because I got so much information that comes in. So we are thankful for that. And I do thank you for joining me on today's program. So I'm going to be talking today about further efforts to establish a world government in the end time. Now, yesterday we talked about the United Nations efforts to focus on global warming and climate change and how they're using that to put the world in fear mode so that way they can redistribute the wealth of the world. It's a socialistic platform, socialistic plan. And we talked about global warming, climate change. Al Gore is coming out with a sequel to his movie, An Inconvenient Truth. It's coming out in 2017. Well, we're going to talk about a different aspect of global governance or world government today. It's prophesied in the Bible. It's one of the most easily recognizable prophecies for the end time. But we're going to talk about something a little different today. So, most of you have seen the story. Antonio Guterres was sworn in as the new Secretary General of the United Nations yesterday. Guterres was the president of the Socialist International from 1999 to 2005. You say, well, why is this significant? Well, prophecies foretell that the establishment of a socialistic one world government is coming in the near future, just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ in the Battle of Armageddon. You say, well, how in the world? Socialism, communism, I didn't realize that was in the Bible. Well, let's look at it. You understand the prophecies of the first four seals. There's the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, the 7 vials in the book of Revelation. Well, the first 4 seals have already been opened. Have been opened for years now. And they give a depiction of 4 horsemen. There's a white horse, a red horse, a black horse, and a green horse. The King James Version says pale, but the original Greek word was chloros, which should have been translated green. So there's a white horse, red horse, black horse, and a green horse. And it gives many clues. I don't have time in today's program to go over all of them, but it gives a lot of clues as to who these entities are. And then, if you jump back to Zechariah chapter 6, verse 1 through 8, it gives more proof of what these horsemen represent. They symbolize spirits that will go throughout the earth and control the ideology or the thought processes of men just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. And they're depicted as colored. They've got colors that represent each one. So, if you think about it, in 2016, what do these colors represent? Well, if you've heard us teach before, the white spirit in the world today is Catholicism. The red spirit is socialism or communism. The black spirit is capitalism. And the green spirit is now rising Islamism. And so that's the first 4 seals in Revelation chapter 6, verse 1 through 8, and Zechariah chapter 6, verse 1 through 8. Well, we know from Revelation chapter 6, verse 4, that the red spirit is communism. It's the red spirit in the earth today. Revelation 6:4 states, "And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, that they should kill one another, and there was given unto him a great sword." Well, of course, if you know anything about communism, they've killed in an effort to usurp authority over the people and to basically dictate communism to these individuals. And in those nations, they've killed millions of people. It fits perfectly with the clues that are given in Revelation chapter 6, verse 4. So the color of socialism or communism in the world today is red. You understood red Russia, red China, all these communist countries. Socialism is also depicted as red. If you go to the internet, look up the color of socialism, red, and go to images, there's tons of red flags that have to do with socialism and communism. The color in the earth today that represents socialism, communism, red or scarlet. So, beyond that, Revelation chapter 13 depicts the one world government as a 7-headed, 10-horned beast. And so you understand in Daniel 7 there were separate beasts that represented nations that would be on the earth at the time of the second coming of Jesus Christ. Jump forward 650 years to the time when John wrote the book of Revelation. And in Revelation chapter 13, he gives the same animals that were separate beast in Daniel 7. They're a big combo beast representing a world governing body in Revelation chapter 13. And it's referred to as the 7-headed, 10-horned beast. It represents all the nations except for the eagle's wings or the United States that are symbolized in Daniel 7. Well, when you get to Revelation 17:3, this is very interesting because it mentions the beast again, but it gives a very key characteristic to that beast. Revelation 17:3 states, "So he carried me away in the Spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit on a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns." So it's the same 7-headed, 10-horned beast mentioned in Revelation 13, but there's a very key point to that. It says it's a scarlet-colored or a red-colored beast. So this is depicting the woman sitting on that is the world religious system. She's sitting on the back of this 7-headed, 10-horned beast, which will be the world government. And it is a clear picture of the union of politics and religion that will be on the earth just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. The world government and the world religion that will partner and be in alliance all the way to the second coming of Jesus Christ in the Battle of Armageddon. But the Bible says that this world governing body is going to be red. Well, remember what we just talked about in Revelation chapter 6. That's the red color or the red spirit that goes throughout the earth to control the thought process of men at the second coming of Jesus Christ is going to be red or socialistic or communistic. So this world governing body is going to be a socialistic or a communistic one world government. The future world government, let me say it again, will be a socialistic or a red world governing entity. And so it's very important that we understand that because of the new UN chief that was just elected, just appointed or sworn in yesterday to the United Nations. He was a socialist. He was the president of Socialist International from 1999 to 2005. You see how the prophecies are coming to pass in intricate detail? A socialist, an extremist, has been put over the United Nations. So, before I go on and we describe a little more of Antonio Guterres and what he's doing in the United Nations and what he really believes, because we need to understand who he is. If he's going to be over the one world government, we need to understand who is he, where's he come from, what's his belief system. Now, I know back when they decided to elect him, I think it was back in mid-October, maybe the latter part of October, that Irvin went over several of the different things that he had done throughout time, and he gave you a kind of an overview of who he was. But I'm going to, in order to give you a little further insight into Antonio Guterres, during the program here, I'm going to go through, take you through the Socialist International. What's that all about, and what do they believe? What are they trying to achieve? Because remember, he was the president of that from 99 to 2005. And now he's a Secretary General of the United Nations. And he's a socialist. He's an extremist. And they put him over the world governing body in the world today. In essence, the United Nations is a world governing body. And so, if you think about it, you've got an extremist, a socialist, over that one world governing body. So we're going to talk about that here in a minute. But before we do, I need to mention again a need that we have here at the ministry. Irvin's been talking to you about it, and we have a lot of, most of you know, we're on most of the major television networks, Christian television networks, TBN, Daystar, and a lot of different ones. And then we're all over the place on the radio, all over the nation. And we have a need here. We have some of those bills that we owe for all of this airtime that we're on before the end of the year. And it's just over like $400,000 that we owe. And I've heard people say, oh, you guys are squandering the money. Come down here and visit us. We haven't squandered a dime. I know a lot of people, a lot of Christian ministries get a bad rap because they've seen these places where these guys have these giant homes and these, 10 million person church and all this other stuff. That's not how we do things. Every dime we get in here goes back into airtime, into winning the lost, spreading the gospel around the world. Believe me, come down here and visit us and you'll see what I'm saying. So it's an honest need from the heart. Irvin's been telling you about it. I'm going to be talking about it this week. And a lot of you give extra in the month of December for tax write-offs and things like that. So if God's blessed you this year, we're asking you to give to this need that we have. And it's just an honest need. We're asking you from the heart to help us out. So, thank you very much. I do appreciate it. And may the Lord bless you all. And even if you can't give a dime, just if you'll pray with us, we covet your prayers. And many of you have been so faithful to partner with us throughout the years. And we're in our 30th year. This is our 30th year anniversary this year. And we are very thankful because people have called in over the years. So many people have been saved. Their lives have been transformed as a result of this ministry. And we're going to continue on. God has never failed us one time, ever. And a lot of times, periodically, I'll go through and tell you guys about a lot of the miracles that we've seen from the beginning, from 86 on, and even before that, a lot of miracles that have happened to our family and to the ministry. And I mean, we've had hundreds of thousands of dollars come in before we didn't know where it was coming from. And as people just start sending us checks, and I know God will supply this need as well. And so we're asking you to help us out right here at the end of the year, and believing that the Lord will bless you for that. So thank you very much. So in talking about Antonio Guterres, who is this guy that was just sworn in yesterday to take Ban Ki-moon's place as the Secretary General of the United Nations? Well, obviously the new UN chief. He's a globalist. He's a socialist. He's an extremist. This information comes from the New American. Now listen at this real closely, because who is this guy? What's he trying to do? Well, the globalism-loving socialist Antonio Guterres of Portugal, obviously he's now been sworn in as the next Secretary General of the United Nations. His prescription for what ails the world, he thinks he can help all this stuff out and kind of solve these problems, the problems of the world. His prescription is more socialism. Remember what I talked about, that this world governing body is going to be a socialistic entity. So he wants to promote more socialism at the planetary level, more power for the UN, and more global governance. That's the solution to everything, right? More restrictions, more regulations, more global governance of this world governing body. That's what they'd like to see happen. And he also wants more mass migration from third world countries to Western countries. He likes all that, all of these illegals that they're bringing over, the refugees into America and into Europe and all these things. He's all about that. They're not going to try to stop that. They're all about doing away with borders, doing away with the nation states, and I'm really going to show you that here in a minute, and promoting a global community that answers to this one world governing body. So really, in other words, more of the same extremism that already has the world in the West on the brink right now, because they're tired of this. They're tired of globalization. You heard Donald Trump talk about it all during his campaign. He said, America is going to be our goal, not globalism. And so he talked about it. The West is on the brink right now. We're tired of it. So we voted in a president who was against that. Where Guterres, he was a Portuguese bureaucrat. He's 67 years old, and he was the socialist prime minister of Portugal before becoming the UN High Commissioner for Refugees in 2005. And he also, now this is very key, because remember the prophecy I just read of a socialistic one world governing body. Well, now the Secretary General of the United Nations, he also led the global tyranny promoting Socialist International. Now I'm going to get off into that Socialist International here in a minute, and it's going to, I'm telling you, this is fitting the prophecies of the Bible, because what these guys are trying to do, this Socialist International, who the Secretary General of the United Nations was the president of for several years, they're trying to do exactly what the Bible says is going to happen in this world governing body just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. So Guterres, he was a Portuguese politician and a bureaucrat, and he is actually going to assume office in January. He was sworn in yesterday. He assumes office in January of next year, less than a month away. So in his capacity as Chief Administrative Officer of the UN, he's actually going to oversee almost 50,000 UN bureaucrats. Does he have any power? Well, of course he does. There's UN peacekeepers all over the world. There's bureaucrats, people out doing things, trying to implement the agenda of the UN, this world governing body. This guy, this socialist extremist, is going to oversee over 50,000 of them. So one of the main giant red flags, notice I said red flag, no pun intended, on Guterres, is on his troubling resume, is his presidency from 1999 to 2005 of the Socialist International. The Socialist International is often referred to as SI. The outfit, it's an alliance of socialist and communist political parties from around the world, including many rebranded former communist parties from the Cold War era that murdered and tortured huge numbers of people. Despite the lack of coverage of the outfit that it receives from the U.S. establishment media, the SI Alliance is extraordinarily powerful, especially at the UN. Of course, where its members control a massive voting bloc and multiple UN bureaucracies. At its 1962 conference in Oslo, the SI came out and said it very clear. Here's what they want to do. The ultimate objective of the parties of the Socialist International is nothing less than world government. So they're telling you right up front, here's what we want to do. And the guy who was president over this for 6 years is now the Secretary General of the UN. What do you think his goal is? It's world government. It's not this great humanitarian organization where we're going to feed the poor and go in and help the sick. That's not what his goal is. That's what he'll tell you in all of his UN speeches. But at the end of the day, he wants nothing less than world government. So at its latest meeting, the SI also demanded that Western nations submit to international bureaucracies in the resettling of massive amounts of foreigners within their borders. Well, they're absolutely doing that. Look at all the refugees and different illegals that have came into America over the last 6, 8, 10 years. Millions of them. And of course, it's going to be at taxpayer expense. Well, the SI's members, over 160 parties from more than 100 nations, they also demand more global socialism and wealth redistribution, which is a socialistic principle. So I'm going to get into, you say, well, what's Antonio Guterres? What's going on in his mind? Because I could talk about things he's done over the last few years, these humanitarian things and, going to schools and reading books to children and things like that. That all looks great when you watch videos of it on the internet or when they show pictures of that on the UN website. Wow, he must be an awesome gentleman to sit around and just try to help the poor and feed the sick and this, that, and the other. He's going to solve the problems of the world, right? No, that's not what his goal is. So in an effort to find out what's this guy really all about, I went and done some research on the Socialists International website because I really wanted to see this guy was the president of this organization for 6 years. So there was a Congress held while he was president back in 2003. Remember, he was president from 99 to 2005. So I went back and found a Congress that was held, the 22nd Congress of the Socialist International back in 2003, right in the middle of his tenure as president. And this is some of the stated goals that they have. Number one, right off the bat, it says that the discussion topic was governance in a global society, the social democratic approach. Well, it states, first off, the social democratic approach to governments in a global society. Number one, under the conditions of globalization, democratic governance has to be reinvented. A global governance concept has to be developed opposing the neoliberal market ideology, the neoconservative agenda, and the unilateralist approach. So right off the bat, they had this Congress, 2003. Antonio Guterres was the president of this organization. And they're calling right off the bat, we've got to reorganize what we've been doing and we've got to have more efforts towards global governance or a world government. Now this individual, Antonio Guterres, I'm going to keep saying it because I want to make sure you understand. He'll be giving speeches over the next few months and years that sound wonderful. Hey, we've helped the sick and we've helped the poor and we did all this other stuff. But that's not his goal. What's going on behind the scenes? That's what I want to know about. Because the Bible says just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ, there's going to be a world government established. It's going to be a socialistic, communistic, one world governing body. And that's what it was designed to do from the very inception. The charter that they still adhere to today was penned by a convicted communist spy, Alger Hiss. They've never changed one word of that charter. So from its inception, so now here we are, almost 71 years later, and we have an avowed socialist as the General Secretary General of the United Nations. He just got sworn in yesterday. And he was the president of this Socialist International. You can look it up on the internet. Find out what they're all about. And so this is a Congress. So number two, the point that they were saying in this Congress, this is 2003. So this is 13 years ago when this guy was president. Imagine where they're at now. The second point that they want to do, one of their goals is globalization is calling into question every basic elements, the very basic elements of the political and social order that we are used to. The nation state, now listen at this, because the process of globalization is the process of doing away with the nation state and having this global community that answers to a one world governing body. Listen to the statement that they make. The nation state, which for more than a century has been a central element of the political, social, and economic order, or more and more of the world's societies, is losing strength and importance. Well, I don't think the United States, which is our own nation state, is losing strength or importance. But according to these socialistic individuals, this man that's over the United Nations now, he believes, this was 2003, that the nation states were losing strength and importance because he believes in a world governing body. So he's going to promote this. It actually states that new transnational units like global and regional organizations or transnational corporations and subnational units like increasingly autonomous subregions and municipalities are taking over parts of the state's discretionary capacities. So they're promoting a world governing body here, folks. Antonio Guterres, the new Secretary General of the United Nations, is a fulfillment of prophecy. One world government, a socialistic one world government in the end time.
From Here to Armageddon, a new exciting 8-lesson series to share with your friends and family. Order yours right away.
Answering many questions like how far are we from the Battle of Armageddon? What will happen between now and then? Where are we on the timeline? Your questions answered in this exciting 8-lesson series, From Here to Armageddon.
Go to endtime.com or call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-END-TIME, 1-800-363-8463. Order yours right away.
Most people have dreamed of someday walking on the ground where Jesus walked over 2,000 years ago. You don't want to wait any longer. Make this the year for your life-changing experience. Judy and I would like to invite you to join us for our 2017 Spring End Time Prophecy Tour. This is a 14-day trip to Israel and Rome. Please join us to experience the greatest place on earth, the Promised Land, with an added bonus, Rome, Italy. Start making your plans right now and join us April 30th through May 13th of 2017. We're going to have a wonderful time.
Call now to reserve your place today at 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463 or go to endtime.com.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archives button.
Well, welcome back, everybody. And I know that we talk about this world governing body all the time, the United Nations, the global government that's going to be established in the end time, just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ and the Battle of Armageddon. But we have to talk about it. It's one of the most recognized prophecies concerning the second coming of Jesus Christ. There's going to be a world government established, and the Antichrist is going to sit at the helm of that. And the world government will be used as a tool by him to usurp authority over every nation on earth. Now, there's going to be resistance. We know that there are nations that will resist against the Antichrist, but most nations on earth will be ruled under the thumb of the Antichrist. So we need to talk about it because it will, in one way or another, affect every nation on earth. They'll either be in total compliance or they'll be resisting it. So we need to talk about it because it's one of the most recognizable prophecies that lets us know we're in the end time. The Bible, it's in intricate detail, this prophecy is coming to pass. So we need to talk about it. So it says there's going to be a socialistic one world governing body established on the earth just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. Antonio Guterres, socialistic to his eyeballs. And from 1999 to 2005, he was the president of Socialist International. Their goal, to create a one world governing body where they can equal the playing field, implement socialistic principles worldwide. It's exactly what the Bible says is going to happen. Well, now the president of that from 1999 to 2005 is at the helm of the United Nations. They had a Congress in 2003, the 22nd Congress, and they were stating different goals that they had at the Congress. Going down through those goals, it's very, very important that you understand who is this guy? What's going on in his mind? He's pushing a world governing body with everything that's within him, a socialistic world government. That's the way they think they can implement this socialistic principles throughout the world and redistribute the wealth of the world through taxes and different things, so that way they can equal the playing field. That's what they're trying to do. That's their goal. The guy that just got sworn in yesterday, Antonio Guterres, that's what he's trying to do. That's his goal in taking that post. World government, socialistic world government worldwide. Well, it goes on to state that in many policy fields, domestic solutions are alone no longer sufficient or adequate, or have to be replaced or accompanied by internationally coordinated political efforts. So they're saying the nation state, all these people out here operating on their own, that doesn't work anymore. We need internationally coordinated political efforts. We need more global governance. That's what he's pushing. From day one, that's what he's going to be pushing in there. The Sustainable Development Goals and all these different things that the United Nations, their agenda, 2030, they're wanting to govern every single citizen on the earth, consumption, production, everything, every aspect of your life and my life. That's what they're trying to do. Antonio Guterres, that's what he believes. That's what he wants to do. That's what's going on inside his mind. Now, he didn't say it right out like that in his acceptance speech, but in some of the speeches recently, he's talked about Sustainable Development Goals. That's the United Nations effort to govern you and I, every citizen on the earth. And they were adopted in September of 2015, and every nation on earth signed on to that, saying, yes, we will implement these goals of the United Nations, including President Obama signed the United States onto that. So every nation on earth bought into that. It was unanimous. And so that's their effort to govern every aspect of our lives. Antonio Guterres stood back and clapped. He applauded that because he's a socialistic globalist. He believes in one world government. Another proposal that they have from the International Socialists from this Congress is basically, in a nutshell, they're saying globalization, ruled as it is by liberal financial logic, it creates economic and cultural wealth. Now, this is 2003, which is distributed in an unequal fashion. They don't like unequal. They're socialist. They want to have the ruling body, and then everything else they want to disperse equally. So there's an equal playing field. They state that the major challenge posed by globalization is therefore that of enabling democratic policy to be effective in the new global environment so that the benefits of globalization, get this, may be shared equitably and be an opportunity for all. So that's what they want to do. Socialism believes that one of the main problems is the haves and the have-nots. And so they want to equal out the playing field. They believe they should tax the haves and funnel that wealth redistribution. You've all have heard about this. Funnel and redistribute the wealth so there's an equal playing field. They don't want one nation having all the money and there's other underdeveloped nations. That's why they hate the United States. That's why they're trying to deconstruct the United States, to reconstruct it in the image of this one world governing body and this socialistic entity. They don't like haves and have-nots. But yet, at the end of the day, they think they know best and can control all this. That's the mindset of Antonio Guterres, who's now the Secretary General of the United Nations. Now, the next principle, they state that this is the things that the International Socialist believes. Antonio Guterres was the president of this. They believe democratic global governance has to intervene if it wishes to come to grips with the effects of globalization. So they're saying right here, if we're going to make this thing work, we have to have more global governance. They're pushing for this global governance. But yet, when Antonio Guterres was sworn in yesterday and he gives an acceptance speech, he's not going to get up there and say, I want more global governance. I'm going to push this down your throat. That's not what he's saying. But that's what he's thinking, I promise you. Because this organization, he was the president of that for years. He's a socialist. He's an extremist. And so that's what he's trying to do. So behind the scenes, and all the meetings that they'll have, and this move for this one world governing body, that's what they're trying to implement. Now, it goes on to say that they are trying to, that they bought into the idea or the ideology of sustainable development. The Socialist International fully supports the concept of sustainable development, or combining the ecological, economic, and social dimensions of globalization or world government. A global strategy for sustainable development has no prospect of success unless it balances the interest between developing and developed countries. They're talking about wealth redistribution here. The 1992 UN Conference on Environment and Development in Rio set the stage for a new global agenda, Agenda 21. Now it's Agenda 2030, and it focused on various aspects of global sustainability or world government. The World Summit on Sustainable Development in Johannesburg in 2002 contributed to the implementation of Agenda 21. The global leaders are buying into it more and more. Every summit they have, they buy into it more and more. Yield up more sovereignty, implement more United Nations socialistic principles in their country. But its results are far from what the Socialist International is aiming for. They've bought into the principle that global warming is the greatest threat to the environment. Now, do you remember on yesterday's program, we discussed the United Nations scare tactics of using global warming to redistribute the wealth of the world, and we talked about it on yesterday's program. Al Gore's coming out with a sequel to the Inconvenient Truth movie that he put out in 2006. He's coming out with a sequel in 2017. And so that's what they're doing here. They bought into this global warming, climate change scam so that way they can redistribute the wealth of the world. That's what they're trying to do through taxation. And that's what the many different taxes, the carbon taxes and all these different things, they're taxing the wealthy, these big corporations, and they're funneling that money to underdeveloped nations so they can equal out the playing field. It's called wealth redistribution. It's a socialistic principle. Antonio Guterres is all about that. He believes that global warming is one of the most perplexing issues in our world today, even though it's a hoax. That's what they promote. That's their scare tactic. So another platform that these guys are marching on, another belief system that they have, is the economic progress in the global economic order. They believe that they need to control the economy. They've got to control the finances of the world in order to have this one world governing body. They state that globalization has undermined the ability of states to steer their economies according to given aims such as full employment, growth, and redistributive taxation. There it is, wealth redistribution. They're pushing for that in all these different taxation modes. And they also say that broader international cooperation and coordination are needed to reverse this tendency. There it is again. We need more global governance so that way we can redistribute the wealth of the world. They're not even trying to hide it. You can go on their website and read about it. I looked it up on the internet this afternoon. And it's a very reliable source. You go on there and find out what they believe. They're not even really trying to hide it. They want to implement a global government, so they can redistribute the wealth of the world, have an equal playing field. There's no nation richer than any other nation. It's a socialistic principle. That's what they're trying to do. The Bible says that's what's going to happen. That's exactly what they're doing. And that's what Antonio Guterres is doing. That's what he's got on his mind. He's not really believing in this great humanitarian organization. He's an extremist. He's a socialist. So they go on to state, but the principles on which the welfare state is based have not changed. Its mechanisms, regulations, redistribution, and public goods have now become the basis for a global order involving the welfare-oriented protection of the poorest in a manner that is compatible with its incentives for private initiative and economic growth, welfare-oriented distribution, and global public goods. It's socialistic principles of welfare that they're pushing, but on a global scale. You have developed nations. People have got in there, they've taken risks, they've built factories, they've built huge companies. You've got millionaires and billionaires, but yet there's underdeveloped nations where they're still living in grass huts and they've got dirt floors. So these people say, okay, here's where the majority of the conflict comes from in the world. The haves and the have-nots. So we need to take from the haves and redistribute the wealth to the have-nots, and we need to equal out that playing field through taxation and different methods. And it's a socialistic principle, but it's never successful. A socialistic, communistic entity has never been successful ever in the history of the world. And so we'll get back into this. What does Antonio Guterres, what's his belief system? What's really going on in his mind? The new Secretary General for the United Nations. We really need to know what's going on. He's trying to push a socialistic one world governing body throughout the world, and he's got the method to do it now.
If ever people need to hear the unvarnished truth, it is now. There are some subjects that are not politically correct to talk about, but they're urgent. That's why I'm grateful for End Time Magazine. If you're not a subscriber, you're missing information that will really impact your life. End Time has a bi-monthly magazine that explains how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. You can get a 2-year subscription for only $29. You can also get a bulk subscription and pass them out to your church. We have gotten reports that End Time Magazine has caused spiritual awakenings in churches when they see the prophecies being fulfilled right now. You can start your own ministry and leave them in doctors' offices, libraries, laundromats. You never know if you might be responsible for saving someone who is searching for the unvarnished truth. That's what the magazine did in my life. Call 1-800-363-8463. That's 1-800-END-TIME and get your subscription today.
So we're talking about Antonio Guterres. Now, I know that it kind of sounds like I'm being dogmatic on this individual, and I actually kind of am, because I want to make sure that you guys understand that these people want to control you. That is their goal. And the Antichrist, who will eventually sit at the head of this one world governing body, he's going to be all about control. The Bible says that they're going to work to cause the world to worship Him. That's going to be the goal. And so you see with the United Nations voting in an extremist, a socialist, who he stands up there, his haircut looks good, he wears a nice suit, he's got a nice tie on, looks like a nice guy, he can give a good speech. You say, I can't be that bad of a guy. You know, and I'd like to talk to him. I'd like to try to win him to God, honestly. I'd like to share the gospel of Jesus Christ with him is what I'd like to do. I don't know if that'll ever happen. But at the end of the day, we have to look at these prophecies and say, the Bible says there's going to be a socialistic one world governing body in the end time, and we have to talk about that. It's not one of the most recognizable prophecies in the Bible just to say, well, let's not talk about that. Let's go to the next one. No. It's put in there so we'll know what to do. We know we're in the end time because this world governing body is already pretty much fully established at this point. They're going to grow real teeth here in the near future. But in many ways, most of the nations, if not all of the nations on the earth, have bought into this world governing body. And they're implementing the Sustainable Development Goals and different platforms that the United Nations have, these socialistic principles. And so now here we have, the Bible prophesies a socialistic one world governing body. That's exactly what we have. We've got a extremist socialist as the head of the United Nations now. He takes control, takes the reins of it in less than a month. So I'm going through a Congress that they had back in 2003, stating their goals, and I'm going to get through as much of this as I can before the end of the program because it's just basically one call for global governance after another. That's what the whole thing is all about. These people are extremists in a drive to create a world governing body that is socialistic at its core. And that's exactly what the Bible says is going to happen just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. It goes on to state that there is a need for global financing and development and of global public goods. New global resources are needed to achieve these aims. A new international financial facility, world government, and some form of global taxation have to be introduced. So they're not going to allow nation states to create their own taxation system. That doesn't work. They want to level the playing field of the nations. So there needs to be a global taxation system. And it states that the World Solidarity Fund, recently adopted by the United Nations General Assembly, should be supported. Now listen to what they want to do. Several types of global tax could be envisaged. Now, you'll recognize many of these taxes because this was 2003. They said that we need a so-called globalization surtax or the net profits of companies. That's what they want to do. Companies here in the United States. They want to introduce a Tobin tax or a taxation on financial markets and transactions. Go to the internet right now and look up Tobin tax. There's hundreds of articles on it. They want to introduce a tax on CO2 or a carbon added tax, carbon taxation. You've heard about that. There's places all over the world that have carbon taxes now. Carbon taxes are solely designed, they don't solve any problem. The factories are still allowed to emit CO2 into the air. But these people just pay more. They pay a tax if they go over the regulated limit that they put on that. If they go over that, they just pay more. They're not worried about global warming, which leads supposedly to climate change. That's a hoax. They're not worried about that. It's the redistribution of wealth. That's what they're worried about. That's what they're concerned with. Because they don't like haves and have-nots. They don't like the United States, let's say, having the most millionaires in the world, but yet there are other countries in the world that people are poor. I believe the United States should help these countries, but we should not be dictated to by a world government that says, we're going to tax you whether you like it or not and give your money to these people. Do not agree with that. But that's what these people are trying to do. Antonio Guterres, that was just sworn in yesterday as the Secretary General of the United Nations, that's what he wants to do. So it goes on to say that beyond the carbon tax, they want a tax on armaments. All the armaments that are sold, they want to put a tax on that to redistribute wealth. They want a solidarity tax on trade, value, and in goods and services. They want to basically tax everything. So that way, but they're not going to tax the underdeveloped nations near like they will, that they are proposing to do the developed nations. And so that's how they redistribute the wealth of the world, is through taxes, taxation. Now, one of the next platforms that they're trying to implement is obviously social justice. Many of you have heard about that. They want to develop policies, development policies. They went out of fashion in the 80s and 90s. In 2000, the United Nations agreed on the Millennium Development Goals. Now it's the Sustainable Development Goals as an ambitious agenda for reducing poverty. How are they going to reduce poverty? They're going to redistribute the wealth of the world and improving lives. These goals are part of the Socialist International's approach, get this, to global governance. They're telling us exactly what they want to do. Today, these goals obviously are called Sustainable Development Goals. If you wonder what the Sustainable Development Goals are designed to do, they're designed to control the production, consumption of every human on earth and to redistribute the wealth of the world to underdeveloped nations. That's the Sustainable Development Goals. You say, well, hold on a minute. Why did President Obama sign us onto the Sustainable Development Goals? We signed a Declaration of Independence, not interdependence, because President Obama is a globalist. He believes in this one world governing body, just like Antonio Guterres does. Is that news to anybody? It shouldn't be. If you watch the principles that him, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, all of them were trying to push, all of them are globalists that believe in a one world governing body. George Bush Sr. started talking about the New World Order. He was a globalist. That's why they really started screaming against Donald Trump when he came out against globalization in his campaign. Because they saw him as fighting against this international community, this global government that they're trying to establish. They couldn't stand it. They were pulling their hair out. They were screaming, and the media, the biased media, was coming against him and trying to make him out to be a buffoon. And I can't believe you go against globalization. But it's actually a good thing, because we don't want to be part of this global government in the end time. The Antichrist is eventually going to sit at the helm of this. You don't want to be a part of that in any way, shape, or form. The Lord is coming back at the Battle of Armageddon to tear down human government. He's going to destroy it. And He's going to set up His government here on earth. That's what you're going to want to be a part of. So they're diametrically opposed. Satan is behind this world governing body. The Bible says that in Revelation 13 that the dragon, which is Satan, gives the Antichrist and this one world governed body his seat, power, and great authority. Satan is pushing this world governing body. The Lord is pushing His kingdom in the earth, and it's being established with Christians, people that are reaching out to God throughout the earth. So the next platform I'll try to get to that before the end of the program, Antonio Guterres and the Socialist International, what they're trying to do is good governance. Governance which will meet the challenges of globalization must be good or effective, democratic, and subject to the rule of law at the state level as well as at the global, regional, and sub-regional and local level. They want to control everything. Get this, a new global order is at stake. The Socialist International needs to build global alliances to make this world government that they're trying to establish multilateral, multipolar, multi-level, and non-unilateral and unipolar. Get this, a system of global governance will have to strengthen the legal framework for states by reinforcing the conflict settlement mechanisms. The International Court of Justice, the International Criminal Court, the World Bank, the International Center for Settlement and Investment Disputes. They comprise a council. We need to comprise a council for sustainable development in addition to a reformed Security Council. We also need to contain effective norms and mechanisms to protect the global biosphere. Reform existing international institutions that will help to stabilize the world economy. They state that there is a need to establish a global political structure, world government, that is both efficient and democratic and thus the best for all citizens of the world. The basis for all efforts towards achieving global democracy should be the UN Millennium Declaration, in which the heads of state and government agreed with respect to human rights, democracy, and global governance, world government, that they would spare no effort to promote the democracy, strengthen the rule of law, and secure respect for all internationally recognized human rights and fundamental freedoms, including the right to development. So, with that said, with the time I have left, let me summarize what we've talked about today. Revelation chapter 13 describes a world governing beast. It's referred to as the seven-headed, ten-horned beast. And it's the world government that will be established in the end time that the Antichrist will lord over. Revelation chapter 17 describes this same beast with a woman riding on the back of it. The woman is the world religious system. The beast is the world government, and they're going to form a union of politics and religion. The Bible says in Revelation 17 that it's a scarlet-colored beast. It's a red beast. Red is another name, another word for scarlet. So, why do they call it a scarlet-colored beast in Revelation chapter 17? Well, if you remember back in Revelation chapter 6, one of the ideologies or the thought processes, one of the spirits that will go forth in the earth is red. It represents socialism or communism. I can prove all that. I don't have time to on the program. So we know from the prophecies of the Bible there's going to be a socialistic, one world governing body established just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ, the Battle of Armageddon. Yesterday, they swore Antonio Guterres was sworn in as the new Secretary General for the United Nations. He, in fact, is a globalist. He's a socialist. He believes in one world government all the way to his eyeballs. He's totally sold on exactly what the Bible says is going to be in place at the time of the second coming of Jesus Christ and the Battle of Armageddon. And we wanted you to know exactly what's going on because, folks, we're not looking for the end time to come. The end time is here, and that world government is here.
End of the Age is a production of End Time Ministries. This broadcast will be available on our website, endtime.com, in the archives section. On our website, you'll also find more information about how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. To reach our operators, call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463. End Time Ministries is partner supported. We would like to say thank you to our partners who made this broadcast possible. To do what Matthew 24:14 said, to reach the world with the gospel of the kingdom.